Here's the scoop, guys. It's confirmed on how Favreau inserted himself into Lucasfilm by writing Mandalorian without authorization. We have done videos in regards to this specific thing, this theory that Kamran had the beat on first months ago, long time ago.
This is my first scoop from 2020.
So this is a Screenrant kind of backing this up. Finally says that Favreau took the initiative to save Star Wars. Let me read some of this. As you know, we're facing momentous change inside Lucasfilm when the reliable KK shills at Screenrant suddenly flip and start kissing Favreau's ring. Here's some delicious quotes. Favreau seemingly realized that what Star Wars needed before the franchise executives ever did. In a feature about the Mandalorian in Empire's April 2020 issue, Favreau revealed that after Disney Plus was announced, he had a series of meetings with Lucasfilm that appeared to be headed nowhere. He took matters into his own fingers and started writing The Mandalorian instead of waiting to get permission. It was a bold move, to be sure. Let me read one more. The Mandalorian isn't just a show anymore. It spawned an entire franchise, the so-called Mandoverse, and it has changed now how Lucasfilm approaches Star Wars entirely. Kamran, tell me about this.
So back in 2020, the reason I'm even on YouTube today was that, I was just a watcher of YouTube videos from 2017 to the beginning of 2020, right? Which is, around, I started watching all these YouTube videos because I was upset about The Last Jedi and I wanted to see if I was crazy. And I found other YouTube people complaining about it. That's how I became a fan of YouTube, and it was there. And then in 2020, it was in February, because it was 2 months before the pandemic, or about 6 weeks before the pandemic officially, really. I had lunch with a good friend of mine who is one of Jon Favreau's inner circle. He's on his crew, has been on most of his movies and shows, and he's a pretty high-profile guy. And we're just having lunch. We're just chatting, and I was grumbling about your state of Star Wars and blah, 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 and that it was hopeful Favreau's coming in. And he said, well, because John is his boss and his friend. He said, again, this is secondhand. It's not Jon Favreau telling me this, but it's my friend who works with Jon Favreau. He said, well, John said to me that he hated those Star Wars movies, and he particularly The Last Jedi. And after seeing these, he's like, these people don't know what they're doing. They're ruining the thing that made me want to become a filmmaker. And most of us of that generation, certainly me, Star Wars is what got us into Hollywood. And so he's like, and what my friend said to me is Jon Favreau reached out to Iger and said, can I help you guys with this? Can you let me into this process? I can fix this for you. You guys are on the wrong track. And then Iger then set up some meetings with Kathleen Kennedy, who had no interest in having this guy insert himself into her fiefdom. But coming from Iger, that's the only way those meetings would even happen, because she doesn't want this guy around. And then he then took the initiative to essentially ram the Mandalorian down Disney's throat to show them what the possibilities could have been had they to let him do stuff. And then they greenlit it. That's what I said back in 2020. What happened was I mentioned in a chat in Geeks and Gamers on a video that I had this conversation with this guy. I was chatting in the thing, and Jeremy Griggs, I think, saw that and goes, "Who's this guy?" Claiming that he's talking to somebody working with Favreau. Says, "You want to come on the channel and talk about it?" So I came on Geeks and Gamers in those days when I was still welcome on channels like that, and I revealed my first scoop, which is that Favreau inserted himself in, took the initiative, was pushed in by Iger. And The Mandalorian was not something that was developed by Kathleen Kennedy, but Favreau did it, sort of against the odds and against the thing. And that was just a claim that I made in February of 2020. Here we are now, 5 years later, and Screenrant is talking about that Jon Favreau inserted himself in. And you don't just, number one, it reveals that he had meetings with Lucasfilm executives. There's no reason for Kathleen Kennedy to take a meeting with this guy. Right? She doesn't want this guy. She never wanted this guy around.
No.
This was something that had to be orchestrated by somebody above her. So that's my supporting what I said. This was Iger himself said, you're going to meet this guy, you're going to listen to what he has to say. And in those meetings, they still didn't agree with Favreau's suggestions. So he said, screw it. I'm going to write The Mandalorian. I'm going to write the pilot episode. I'm going to show you the script of what it could be, which is, by the way, how I've done a lot. Most of the scripts that I've sold have been because I pitched them, people didn't get them. I then spec'd out a script and I sold that script when people saw the script, which is exactly what he did. He came in, showed them, this is what we've got. I can make this show. And Iger's like, yeah, do the show. Kennedy didn't want to do the show, but here I am. I had to endure 5 years of Cameron's making this stuff up, blah, blah, blah. And now finally, 5 years later, that narrative is now out there by a shill for Kennedy. Screenrant has been a shill for Kennedy all these years. Now they're saying that. Screenrant has been 100% Kathleen Kennedy all these years. And suddenly this article is about how Jon Favreau saved Star Wars and went against the Lucasfilm executives and took his own initiative. That's not the narrative that this magazine has been pushing, this website has been pushing for 7, 8, 9 years, right? That's shocking. It's coming from them. What it is a recognition of who's really in charge, right? And you're kissing the ring of the person in charge. So at the very least, it suggests that people at Screenrant have figured out the change that is coming or that's already done. And it's quite possible that Favreau, or someone on his team just called this in, and these people were eager to put this out there. Either is possible, but it certainly shows Screenrant has figured out where the bread is buttered.